Hey Peyton, nice to see you again on this beautiful day. And this time with a random quote, which goes like this: Don't pray for your life to be easy. Pray for the strength to meet every challenge. Peyton, how can you relate to that? And especially for the part where we want it to be easy, but what we actually need is not what we want.
Yeah, great quote. And I can say I have a lot of experience praying for both of these things. And
Same here.
one experience I would share is that in praying for both of these many times, it seems like only the second one is granted. Very rarely is the easy life granted to me. The strength to meet the challenge, on the other hand, this actually God delivers the goods and the Spirit delivers the goods. I think that for me in my own life, it's important to be reminded, whether it's just recalling it to mind or at certain times some wise friend has pointed out to me along the way that even when it feels like we cannot endure anymore, we can't do anymore, we can't go on, we can't continue, we can't sustain what we must sustain, that there is something within us that actually is infinite. There is something within us that can always go on. There is something within us that always has life force flowing through it, that we can always fall back into, that we can't create, that we don't manage, that aren't a master of, but that we can lean on and be held by. And this source within us, this I think is the source of the strength when life refuses to be easy over and over and over again for a very, very long amount of time. And actually, this truth, in the pragmatic sense of the word truth, this wearing on of this idea that there is something within that can bear any burden, that can always continue, that does have the strength to hold whatever must be held right now, in this moment, always, when I look, when I test it, when I fall back, when I come back to it, when I return. It's always there. It's always faithful. It's here like our own breath. It's seeing with our own light. And I think that faith that we return to continually for those tiny moments when we feel like we can't hold it up on our own anymore, it delivers the goods. And in that pattern of it delivering the goods, we can grow our trust in it. How do you think about this? What does it feel like to be given the strength to endure every challenge? How can we perhaps open and accept such a strength when we don't have any more strength of our own?
We can access it in circumstances where we don't believe anymore that we can do it, but holding on and pushing through somehow activates this dormant resource within us. What I think is the case is that it's somehow a survival mechanism. It's always there, but when we think we cannot do any longer, maybe we are only at 40% of our untapped potential yet. So it's the thing to acknowledge that maybe there is much more potential within us to be discovered than we previously thought would be there. Maybe it's a prompt for us to believe in ourselves even more and in our capability to meet the challenge with the strength. But only if we don't give up, only if we continue to push through. Because if we think we can't, or if we think we can, both times we will be right in the consequences of our beliefs. Because whatever we believe may become real for us in its consequences. When we believe we cannot do it, then we won't even try. We won't even try to push through. But if we believe that we can tap into this source with what you talked about, the source within us, the strength which is always there, the thing we can lean on, the fountain of energy somehow, then we try and try again. We push and push again. We can manage to push through given the strength we prayed for and we believed we can tap into. Peyton, how do we access this source when we don't want to access the source, when we are low in our belief, when we maybe are worn out or so tired that maybe we are on the edge of not pushing through anymore, but just like collapsing? How do we
Mm.
do that?
The sentence that comes to mind in this moment is water cannot be broken. Ice can be broken. Ice can be shattered. Water cannot be broken. And what does that mean to me? I think it's in these moments when we feel besieged or pinned down or like we can't go on or like we have passed our limits and there's no more. In my experience, the way to find the greater resource within is not by being stronger in the ways that I effort and struggle to be strong. It's not in tensing up against all of this. It's not in getting better at controlling reality or struggling against it, or a supreme act of heroic exertion and struggle intenseness. For me, I find this when I allow what is rigid within me to break open. And when I allow what I resist to fully be here, when I allow myself to free fall into the unfolding now, when I allow myself to unify once again with the unfolding universal will of what really is. And in that surrender to reality, in that realigning with what is here now, that's where there's almost this returning to firm ground, reaching the bottom, opening up, accepting and being where I am, and then the capacity to stand once again is found or discovered, not created by me, but actually discovered or re-encountered or reconnected with. And for me, I think of blessed are the poor in spirit. What does it mean? What is the experience of being poor in spirit? What is the experience of softening what is too rigid within us? These things and this accessing this deeper and divine capacity doesn't come from me being a hero and a superstar and awesome and so powerful on my own. There is this sense of true strength seems weak, or true steadfastness seems changeable, or true wisdom seems foolish, or true love seems indifferent.
Welcome back.
Missed you. Is your camera working?
Yes, I see
All
mine.
right. There we go. Now we're back.
So
But
I didn't
anyways,
catch the last part.
yeah. Yeah. It's just the finding of the strength to meet every situation comes from an opening to it. It doesn't come from my own clenching up a little harder. It tends to come from me turning from a clenched fist into more of a liquid. And in that, I find that the source is faithful. The source can be trusted. The source is infinite. Every time I come back to it, every time I open my heart to it and trust in it. This, I think, is what it means that life won't always be easy, but we can pray for the strength to meet every situation, to be given the strength, to be flowed through. This is that experience for me. What does it feel like to be flowed through? Or when we're in a moment when we know we need this strength to be given and we don't seem to yet have it at hand. We don't seem to feel its flow through us right now. We feel disconnected from it. What are the prerequisites or the practices of returning for us to recall right now, if now is that kind of a moment? What is the best practice in your experience?
Practice, in my experience, is to be close to nature.
Yeah.
Second best practice, if you can't be close to nature, is having a regular meditation practice. Not any kind of meditation. Sometimes it's focus meditation. Sometimes it's mindfulness meditation. Both are helpful. One is to tune your spirit to be more focused and not so much distracted. The other one is take in everything you can take in with all of your senses. This helps you to increase the capability of experiencing different things and also experiencing how it feels to not resist any longer. So this is a soft way, the soft path towards tapping into the source. There is also fairly painful path to cracking open, and it's to crack open. Feel the intensity of the pain increase until there's no increase anymore, until there's no pain anymore. So this also happens sometimes if we are psychologically so tortured or physiologically tortured in a way that there's this storm before it gets calm. And some people report that it happened for them after the maximum intensity of pain they felt. And they thought they couldn't bear it anymore. So they let go and then they received. So this is the practice, like you pointed to, it is to let go your clinging, to let go, not get rope burn, but to let go with open hands and receive back the calmness that the source offers you. So what is something to add, Peyton, from your experience?
What I would throw on the practice as well is non-dual practices and the sort of waking up practices that can be so helpful at just cutting through right away. Sometimes there can be, when we learn to practice in certain ways, it can be like there's a thread that's really taut, and then it can just be sliced perfectly down the middle and just fall away. And sometimes in practicing this way, we can realize that we're in a state of deep contraction and deep suffering, and we can just recognize the ultimate nature of reality and see that peace is already present, that actually there is always this baseline of silence, even in the greatest noise, and that there is this source that we don't have to struggle and strive up the mountain to climb every time from where we're at to where we go. It's actually, we can cease to cut ourselves off from the breath that is already breathing us and feel what it is like to be breathed by this flow, by this life force. That practice, I think, does for me feel the most natural in nature, as you say. And this corollary practice, and it's almost a foreign way to experience this concept to me up until recently, is worship of the divine in nature. And I always, when I was growing up in my culture and all this, I've associated worship with expression, but that's not what I mean. I mean worship as taking in the wholeness, worship as aligning ourselves with what is here right now and having a complete open hearted melting into the reality here. Just now, just right in this instant, just directly, intimately being breathed in and unifying ourselves with reality, with the unfolding, with our vivid whole experience of all that we are drinking in with our senses right here, all that we feel right here. That I think is a foundation of returning home, returning to the source, returning to where there is always more capacity, to the sky that is never actually harmed by these storms. And importantly, for me to remember, the sky that is unharmed by the storms doesn't always block out the storms. It doesn't block out the storms. The storms arise and they flow, and the weather comes and it goes, and there's wind and there's rain, and then there's sun shining through. There's calm afterwards, and then it returns. This movement is the way of what goes on. Changing is the way of what goes on. We can't struggle and block out all that we don't like. At least I've never experienced some capacity to always block stuff out, but we can tap into the breath that breathes us even through the darkest night, the breath that breathes us even through the most intense storm. That I think is this praying for strength that we can come back to. Pray not for a better internet connection. Pray for the strength to have patience. But I wanted to ask you just anything else. I think that we've touched on the softness element of what it means to ask for strength, but that's really partial. I think that's only one side. I think there's also a vulnerability of finding strength when it's hardest to find, and there's also a courage and a vitality and a forcefulness that there is to find strength from this source when we need it most. It doesn't always take the form of softness in, at least in all ways. I'm curious if you have any reflections on the many forms that it takes to ask for strength when life is difficult, the many moods, experiences, energies, and changing capacities that we must open ourselves to along the way. What is the unity underneath all of these different forms and surface flows?
Comes to mind is that we have the power over our own perspective. When it's too hard, we are overwhelmed and we cannot bear it anymore, then we have it in our power to switch our lenses. We can say, oh, this mountain is too high and the night is coming and I don't know how to climb the mountain. But we also can just say, okay, I go this next step and then the next and then the next. And with that, we always find the incremental strength to do the next best step, to climb the mountain, to reduce the complexity of what we think is before us. It is the interplay between how we deal with our mind and how our body deals with us. Mm. So coming together, there's this softness, but also this willful forcefulness, which comes from within you. And it's both, in my opinion. But like you said, water cannot be broken. So soften up to flow around the obstacles, which also means soften up your rigidity in perceiving whatever is in front of you. And if you can do that, you reclaim the power over your mental state again. And then you can steer your ship again and access more of that, what we call source. Anything to add, Peyton?
The last thing that comes to mind is strength always arrives now. Strength
Mm-hmm.
doesn't arrive in me trying to figure out the whole future. Strength doesn't arrive in my getting caught up in my regrets over the past or in my grievances toward others. Strength arrives here now. And returning to strength always must entail returning to now. In my experience, this is where all of this cashes in. This is where the life force can enter us and flow through us, and where this infinite capacity can be encountered directly. It is now. So, this is my intention for the week. I am in a phase right now where I often find myself praying for strength, where I often find myself grateful to meet a resource that I cannot create, that I rely on, and that I am helpless without. And this week is no different, and today is no different. And so let me return to this source. Let me open myself to this flow. Let me remember that cut off from the source, I can do nothing. But in the source, I can bear fruit. And so this is my intention for the week. How about you, man? Any last reflections from you?
My intention for this week is to reclaim my power over my perspectives
Good.
and change from too big and being overwhelmed to just going the next best step after step after step.
Amen. Amen. Great talking to you, my friend. I appreciate you sharing your perspectives as always. Really enjoyed the conversation, and I will
Likewise,
talk to you on
man.
the next one.
Talk to you soon and cheers to Puma.
Puma knows how to stay in the now and take the next step.